Good morning, digital designers. This is Mr. Roper, and today we're going to start experimenting with using the pen tablets that we have for digital drawing in this class. Your pen tablet is basically a little plastic surface like this, and it's also going to come with a stylus. And when we use it, we're going to hold it just like you would a normal pencil, but you're going to put your hand, let's see if I can show you there, on just above the surface. I'm not actually touching the surface of the pad. I'm just moving around up above it like this. And I'm also going to try to keep let's see if I can show you my keyboard here, my keyboard off to the side so that with my left hand, I can hit the buttons as I'm painting with my right hand. Okay, if you're left-handed, you'll just reverse this setup, but you can see how that would work. Okay. So we're going to practice with these pen tools and get to know some of the brushes that you have available using some sample images. And I downloaded a couple of these to use as demos, and they're still life images of different fruits and vegetables. So I'm going to just go to open, and I'll go to my downloads bin, and I've got some to pick from here. Let's see what they look like. We've got some peppers, some tomatoes, some fruits. Let's see, I'm going to start just with this fruit one here, keep it easy. And this will open up. They're all exactly the same size. They're about 2000 pixels by 2000 pixels. So you should have plenty of pixels to work with for this. And I'm going to set up my toolbar over here along the side so that I've got easy access to reach it. Now, Photoshop actually has a setup for your screen for when you're digital painting. You're going to go up to the window menu and choose the workspace for painting. And it will relay out all of your screen so that you have your toolbar here. You've got your layers over on this side. You've got your colors, which we're going to be picking from as we paint. And then you've also got some adjustments that you can make to the different brushes that we're going to be using. Okay. We're going to be painting on a layer up above these fruits and vegetables. So I'm going to go ahead and lock this layer, but I'm going to turn its opacity down a bit. Ooh, too much. Let's take it to right about there just so I can see it. And we're going to lock this layer up. And then I'm going to add a new layer right above it. And the first thing I want to do is kind of mark off the shapes of these different objects that I'm going to be painting. So for that, I'll use the lasso tool. I'm going to just take the freehand lasso, and I'm going to kind of roughly go around and mark off the outside of this apple shape. Okay, try to get some of the curves there and the stem and just connect it back up. And if you missed any pieces, remember you can hold down Shift and grab a little bit more. You need to pick up some that you missed, or if you hold down Alt, you can use that to cut off any parts that you don't want. Like I went a little bit outside this apple, so I'm going to cut that part off. That looks pretty good. So now it's time to start painting here, and we're going to come down on our toolbar to the paint brush tool. That's the letter B on your toolbar. And as soon as you have that selected, you'll see that you've got some options over here for the type of brush you can paint with. And they're in categories right now. There's general brushes, which let you open up and you can see that we've got soft brushes and hard brushes. And most of these have settings that will respond to your pen tablet. So the harder you press, it can change the size of the brush. It can change how dark the colors are, or it can even change some of the opacity. So I'm going to just start here. Let's take the hard pressure size, and I'm going to go and double tap my color picker. And let's get like a nice apple red out of here. And because I've already marked this off with a selection, I can just paint in big brush strokes like this to fill that space in. Okay. Now that's just the general brushes. You'll notice, let me go back a step. That was with the hard brush. Here's the same approach, but with a soft brush. You can see that the edges are a little bit fuzzier, and that lets me fill it in almost like a spray can. Okay. Underneath the general brushes, you have dry media brushes, and these are ones that look more like charcoal or pastels, like hard art materials that you would use. So for example, if I take the charcoal pencil, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger here. You can see that this brush has kind of a weird shape to it. And when I paint with it, the edge comes out with a little bit more texture. So it actually looks like I'm painting with a charcoal stick for this one. Okay. If I go back a couple steps here, let's do Control Z. There we go. We can try the pastel. This one also has some texture to it. If I turn the size way up, you can see that I can, the harder I press with my brush, the darker that red comes out to. Okay, so I can actually create some dark spots and some light spots on this using that pastel. Underneath that, we have the wet media brushes. These are brushes that look like wet materials like watercolors and oils and inks. So they're going to give you even stranger effects as you paint with them. For example, if I take this oil brush and make it bigger, this one will create like a smoothing effect where it looks like you're kind of blending the paint colors together. I'm going to grab a slightly lighter red so you can see this. And you'll notice that as I brush, it's actually smoothing those colors together. Let's get a little bit lighter than that even. And this is kind of replicating the look of like a real oil paintbrush where you're getting like smudging and different colors blending together there. So it gives you a really painterly style. Okay, finally down below that, your last category is special effects brushes. These are brushes that look like splatter paint or scratches or dust and things like that. So if I pick up one of these, like the spatter brush, you can see that as I paint with this, it creates a little paint splatter. The harder you press, the more splats it's going to create. So you can use this to get some texture in your design as well. Now, in addition to these four basic categories, you have thousands more brushes available to you with your Adobe account. And the way that you add more brushes in Photoshop is you're going to come to your brush palette, click on the little hamburger menu, and you're going to look for this option, Get More Brushes. That will open up a new window in Chrome, and it's going to take you to the Adobe site for Kyle Webster's brushes. We talked about Kyle Webster in class, and I showed you kind of his story about how he got his job with Adobe. But he has made thousands of his brushes available for free to Adobe users. So when you go in here, you'll see that there's categories for dry brushes, spatter brushes, manga brushes, which can replicate the look of Japanese comic books, copier brushes, and then some really neat ones that he releases every season that have things like flower petals and tree branches and things that you might use to paint particular scenes from different times of year. What we're going to do, and what I would recommend the first that you start off with today, would be to download the concept pack. So we're going to hit download right there. And the mega pack, because this one comes with like a good assortment of about 300 different brushes. Now, once those download, and you'll see them pop into your downloads bin up here, they're pretty big files, so they might take a second. But once they finish downloading, you're just going to double click that file, and it will open up in Photoshop. And now they've been added to your Photoshop brushes, and they'll be there every time you open up your software from now on. So if I go into my concept brushes, and I readjust the size of this, you can see all the different ones that we now have available. This slider right here lets you change the size if you want to see them up close. Some of these brushes look like leaves or grass. There's ones that create grain, all different types of styles in the concept brushes. This bubble burst one's kind of interesting. Let's see if I paint here. It kind of creates little bubble textures that you can paint with and build up really nice textures. So take a second and kind of explore what's available in there. I'm going to go get the other pack that I downloaded, which was the Mega Pack. So I'm going to double click on the Mega Pack file. And then if I jump back over to Photoshop, scroll up here, I'll close the concept brushes, and there's my Mega Pack. Okay. I'm going to open it up, and you can see that it's categorized by erasers, drawing tools, inks, all kinds of different ones. For here, I'll grab maybe the oil brushes. Let's Let's get one of these and we'll come back over. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, you can see it's a very faint brush, but it's letting me kind of blend. Here's one that's got some bristle marks for it. And so now I can make this look even more like a painting. Okay, you can smudge colors together and get some really neat effects. So hundreds of brushes available to you here. You're going to actually select a few of these to use in your painting. And our goal here is going to be to rebuild this still life using this process of the lasso tool and selecting colors and filling in the different shades that you see for the shadows, the highlights, and the midtones. Let's continue on here. I'm going to grab a new layer. Let's call this one Apple. And we'll add a second layer here behind it because the banana is behind the apple here. We'll call this one Banana. And I'm just going to outline that shape again. So with my lasso tool, carefully as I can, I'm going to try to create that basic banana shape. Got a little bit wacky there. Let's see if we can clean that up. I'll use my Alt click to erase any of the pieces where I went outside the banana. So let's get rid of that. And this part right here. And then go right along this edge. Holding down Alt this whole time so that I can cut those pieces off, okay? And then we'll go ahead and fill it in. So let's go pick our color. Come down into our color palette. Find a nice banana yellow. And over my brushes, let's see, I think I'll do this one with the oil brush again. I like that one. Oils, let's try this one. A little bit bigger and you may notice on some of these brushes, they will slow down a little bit just because they take more memory than some of the basic ones, but that's okay. Just give it a second to recover. Let's come up here, grab a nice highlight color, and I can start to brush in where I saw those light spots up top. I'm just constantly going back and picking different shades of color wherever I want to put those highlights and shadows. And then finally, let's get like a kind of a darker banana and put this down here for where those shadows went. Blend them in a little bit. And we're just picking this up, okay? Remember that whenever you have a brush enabled, if you hold down Alt, your brush turns into an eyedropper where you can pick up a different color. And that's how you can go back and forth between lights and darks as you're painting. I remember there's a little like stem on the end here. So let's grab kind of a darker color for this one. And we'll just put a little on the end and one right up here. Smudge those together. Okay, it's looking good. The important part here is you're going to want to keep each of your items on its own layer. So we'll have one layer for the apple, one for the banana. We'll have another one for this green apple back here. And then underneath all of it, as we finish up, we're going to create a layer just for those shadows that are down there. So you'll be able to grab, a dark gray or a black, something like I'm doing here, and just kind of smudging in where you see those shadows underneath the fruit. And as long as we keep that layer below each of the pieces, it'll look like it's behind it, okay? And you can smudge these in using a combination of black and white and gray. Sometimes if you really look at the shadows, they contain a lot of color because they're reflecting some of that light off the fruit. So pay attention to that and see what you can find. And the more detail and more texture you add, the better. It's just going to add more believability to your design. Okay. One last thing I'm going to do here, just as a trick, I showed you guys how I set up the basic fruits. What I'm going to do is go back to that layer now and unlock it. I'm going to go ahead and turn its opacity all the way back up and use Control T. Just move this off to the side. So instead of focusing on the shapes, now I can just look at the colors here and see exactly where there should be some shadows and highlights. Like I'm going to go back in with some dark red for this shadow on the apple, maybe some white for this little reflection. I need some black for the stem. So having this up in the top corner lets me see exactly where I need to go back and put in some extra detail on this. And of course, when I'm done, I'll just turn this layer off and it'll be good to go. Okay, so this is going to give you some really good practice using the pen tablets today. Take your pick of any of the reference images that I put on Google Classroom and have some fun. Experiment with different brushes, see what kind of texture effects you can get. We'll end up with 30 works of art at the end of this that we can see how you approach your particular painting. All right, have fun.